As Jesus was walking along, he saw a man called Matthew sitting at the tax booth, and he said to him, "Follow me." And he got up and followed him. And as he sat at dinner in the house, many tax collectors and sinners came and were sitting with him and his disciples. When the Pharisees saw this, they said to his disciples, "Why does your teacher eat with tax collectors and sinners?" But when he heard this, he said, Those who are well have no need for a physician, but those who are sick. Go and learn what this means. I desire mercy, not sacrifice. For I have come to call not the righteous, but sinners.
All right, happy Feast of St. Matthew, or Matthew Day, to one and to all. As you guessed, you probably guessed it, today's the Feast of St. Matthew. And it's one of my, I guess it's a feast day that intrigues me more because we don't really know much about Matthew's interior life prior to his conversion or prior to the story we just heard. We know Matthew was a tax collector, which means he was not well liked by other folks because his job was to get taxes for the Roman government from the Jewish people. So he had to handle Roman currency, which is a no-no in Jewish law. It's something that makes you unclean. He also had to sort of extort money from his Jewish brothers and sisters because the way he made money was getting money on top of and in addition to the taxes that the Roman government desired. Like if you needed $10 for a bridge, he'd get 15 and pocket the rest. So he wasn't. Tax collector is not a good job in biblical times or in around Jerusalem or in the Jewish world. They were seen as despicable, despisable characters. But on the other hand, Matthew had a job that brought him privilege, protection, safety, and financial security. So he was well-to-do, had the Roman army, the Roman soldiers sort of protected him. And so life wasn't too bad if you discredit the, all the hatred and shade or whatever you would get from your fellow citizens. So it's kind of interesting. I like to think Matthew, even though he had all these things, protection, financial security, prominence, privilege, all those things, that Matthew was not happy. His soul was empty. He was not in a good place. So even though he had everything and was one of the most powerful people in his town, he still lacked a rich, robust fullness to his life, or he had a longing in his soul that was not filled. And so when he heard about Jesus and got the opportunity to meet Jesus, that longing and emptiness in his soul began to ache so strongly that he invited him to dinner, and his life forever changed. He left behind the security and financial gain and privilege and all that to follow Jesus, and in doing so, that empty longing in his soul was filled. And so that's where I want to give us a thought to think about today. I run across a lot of people with that same empty longing in their soul, or meaninglessness of existence. They're just like, I'm going through the motions, I'm going to work every day, I'm doing what I'm supposed to do, but life just is not good. Life is meaningless. I feel empty inside. I feel dead inside. And if that's you, take Matthew's story to heart. Matthew had that longing, and he knew something had to happen. It was drastic. He left a good career to follow Jesus. Maybe you don't have to be that drastic, but you do have to recognize that longing. And St. Augustine or St. Augustine, depending on your preferences, once said, "Our hearts will not rest until they rest in Jesus," or something to that effect. And so if your heart is longing, if your heart is empty, things like drugs and alcohol are not going to fill it. There's, activities, hobbies you can take up, like bicycling or something, but that's not going to fill it. The only thing that will fill that empty longing, that the desire in your heart is Jesus, and putting yourself to work for him. So if you have that sickly longing or the empty feeling or the feeling of nothingness or uselessness, look at your life and see what you do for Jesus. You know, how do you fulfill and manifest your love for him? What does that look like in your day-to-day activities? What does that look like in the world? Have you invited Jesus into those parts of your heart that are empty and longing, that you're trying to fill with everything else in the world, but will never happen? If you hadn't, invite him into those spaces. Think about that. Think about what's going on inside your own soul, and change it. Do like Matthew. Invite Jesus into your house to eat dinner. You know, fall in love with him all over again. So that's our thought for the day. I hope everybody has a great feast of St. Matthew and is kind to one another, and everybody says their prayers and reaches out, checking on somebody and telling them you care about them. So do those things and have a great feast day. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen.